Oh, this is good. Play clip number 8.
It's a great thing is that we were young. There's so many of us at our age now.
We were hippies, and then they voted for Reagan.
And now, no.
We didn't. If some of them did. He got elected.
Don't put down what our generation and the people that came after us did. We held on to our values, and that's why gay people can get married.
Defending our generation.
No, you're making it sound like, young people, it's going to get tough for you, and it's going to be awful.
I'm going to say.
And then you're going to get more conservative.
They are.
Our generation is not more conservative. We live in a liberal country.
There's a lot of suggestions there that America is liberal. It gives people a bandwagon approach of thinking, like, oh, I must be liberal too.
Yeah.
Huh. There's a few suggestions in there. What else did I miss? There's a lot to kind of dissect there.
What you're seeing is the only thing I would call it is this is the liberal mind. All right, you can see how the premises he puts together, his belief construct. He thinks this is a liberal place. And I've kind of tried to say to you that, when you look at these vote totals and the data, it's not a liberal place, it's a divided place, although there is a political cycle that goes back and forth. Now, the one thing that I think is kind of funny is this generational symbiosis, this sort of kumbaya thing he's trying to do. He's trying to say that his generation was the liberal generation of the 60s, and that, he stayed that way and stayed true to his principles. And now they're in this symbiotic relationship with these young people, because we all know that the young are liberal and so forth. And I know when I was going to college, this is who I was. I was former governor. I would have been campaigning for Bernie. I campaigned for Jesse Jackson in the 1980s. I had really long hair. Trying to get back there again. And, this idealistic vision. But here's the problem. This narrative is fundamentally problematic. And it's problematic because what really happened in real life is that you had the 60s generation, and then they ended up they went from hippies to yuppies. And in the 1980s, they started to like material wealth. And there's actually a movie called The Big Chill. I don't know if you've seen The Big Chill.
No.
But you should rent that movie because it's got a lot of interesting political overtones about that, about how generations became yuppies.
There's no more Blockbuster. I'm going to Google.
Right.
Where do I watch this for free?
Yeah. But the point is, okay, so now the one thing that I want to say, the reason why they became yuppies is young people don't have wealth and status. It's a lot easier for me to say, give me free college, when I'm whatever. Okay, so once you start working and once you start getting wealth and status and once they start saying free stuff means taking your money and giving it to somebody,
Right.
all of a sudden this begins to look different once you become part of the property class. Now, the other thing that's interesting is his narrative about the 60s generation isn't exactly true. I want to say this to you for a second. It was the Bill Clinton presidency that was the ascendancy of that generation. That was talked about. We're a new generation of Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
The torch was passed. Bill Clinton was the first president from. Remember, I smoked, but I didn't inhale. Remember they asked me about the marijuana.
Right.
So he came along, and I remember who in the '60s generation opposed him. It was Dan Quayle. Because he was from that generation too. And you had Dan Quayle and his wife saying those people were on the wrong side of the issue. They were hippies, and they were. Go look at those old pictures of Clinton and Hillary. I show those to my students. They were hippies
Really?
back then. Yes. Yeah, so they grew up, they got wealth and status, and they became new Democrats, post-Reagan Democrats. So his narrative is totally wrong. This idea that we stayed true to our principles, and now we're going to hook up with the millennials. Let's play clip number 9.
First of all, this thing where you are always romanticizing the young people. Everybody looks good when they're young because they're not in power. They don't have to make decisions.
Yeah, but they're
so perfect.
Now.
They're so innocent. No. And you know what? When they get to our age, they'll be assholes too. Because when you get, like every generation, Mike, every generation, this veneration of the young. Yes, of course, everyone's idealistic at that age. And then you have to pay taxes and you raise a family. You have to find a way to put food on the table. You have to do all this shit. And you get near money and you like it and it corrupts you. Do you think they're going to be as innocent as everybody else?
That's it right there. Yeah, as we get older, the idea is that we become more conservative.
Well,
from our liberal mindsets when we're teenagers.
I would simply say we just simply become less idealistic. And I know I went through this transformation. It wasn't that I don't feel like I got more conservative. I felt like the template I was using for what was fitting reality, the template didn't work. Okay, we become less using a template. I know that for me, my sense of what poor people were changed when I began providing them legal services. I began realizing it wasn't that I was stereotyping, because some people could be helped and some people had some real problems that they couldn't be helped. I was representing people and trying to represent them, and you try to make the case that they should get, for example, probation, and it was very easy to find a victim of circumstance. Very easy to argue for people, and then you could find other examples where this really isn't a candidate for probation because I'm having trouble making this case. As a lawyer, I realized that, and as a lawyer, I also realized I had to employ people. I had to employ people, so people start saying, "Oh, you should provide health insurance and everything." I'm like, this is interesting. How does that work? What if my profit margin in my small business isn't that good?
Yeah.
Yes, you start having that problem. And
there's always the concern of tanking the boat, you
run a small business, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So, how much time do we have in this segment?
We're doing really well in time. We've got at least 7 minutes.
All right. Let's listen to this idea here. It's clip number 4.
Voters don't vote like this. They don't look on an ideological spectrum and say, I'm more with this person. They look at, who do I trust? Who is full of shit?
Right.
And that's the problem with centrism, is a lot of times centrism, especially in the Democratic Party, comes off as being full of shit.
But centrism...
Poll-tested, focus group, full of shit, and that's what makes it
really... Where's Crystal Ball going with this? What do we need to absorb?
Well, again, you're watching the liberal mind, and she's convinced herself that if you go out and be pragmatic, that somehow that's not going to be good enough. We can give her nods to this. Maybe what she's saying is the centrist people aren't loud. They're not clear. That's one of the things today is, Trump is loud and clear, Bernie's loud and clear. And maybe she's saying that. But the other thing that I think she's conflating here is this idea that sometimes when you're not good, like Bill Clinton was good at being a centrist, you sound wishy-washy, And so I think she's conflating being passionately pragmatic with being wishy-washy, And so sometimes people say, well, I voted for this, but I wasn't really for it. You saw Hillary do that a little bit. She had to change her stance on, I think it was a gay marriage. In the political generation she grew up with, and she couldn't be for it, even if she was for it, because she wouldn't win. So she had to do what she had to do to survive. And then people, today in today's world, they say, "How could you be for this back then? How come you didn't come out for this?" Well, I had a change of heart, and I changed my mind. And so
when in reality, it just wasn't strategic.
Right. And so there's that issue. So I think she's conflating, not pulling it off well with and there's something interesting too. Play clip 5.
A centrism is Joe Manchin. We have lots of centrists in the Democratic Party. Am I right?
You just called a Joe Manchin full of shit. So what do you think? What do you think people who support that kind of candidate is going to do in this next election cycle? They're not coming home to roost with you. They're going to hang with Trump, because the better the devil I know who respects me and doesn't call me names,
but what is that based on?
the devil who looks at me and says full of shit.
What is he suggesting? It's better to stay with the devil I know. He's suggesting that people will continue voting for Trump rather than maybe I got that backwards.
This is a Republican theme that you hear constantly. If you have someone like Joe Manchin, or someone I don't know, it could be
who is Joe Manchin?
Joe Manchin is a senator from West Virginia. Okay. So if you have like these someone from West Virginia who's a centrist. By the way, I would consider him centrist, not center left. So he's maybe he's very conservative, much more conservative than I think than Bill Clinton was.
Gotcha.
And so if you have some of these people around and they're in your party, and they've won, they're in not safe seats or whatever. What he's saying is, isn't it interesting how some of these people on the left really want to insult them, and they want to say, oh, you're just full of whatever. You're just, sometimes he suggests that you don't know what you're talking about,
right.
or whatever. You're misinformed. You're just in your information bubble. You're just watching Fox News, where I'm one of the better people, So if you start doing this kind of stuff, then all of a sudden, all the person hears is, all these negative messages, and then they get pushed a certain way. You can understand this as someone. One time I was watching Bill Maher, and there was a person on there talking about the how in current times we live in this patriarchal state. It was a feminist saying it. And it was rather interesting because what basically the person was saying was a little bit different than you'd hear 20 years ago. It used to be they'd say women had a choice. You either go to work or stay home, however you want to do it. Well, now this person was saying the person who stayed home was somehow being
oppressed.
So like I'm thinking here, I'm listening to this person. He's like, you're saying my mother's done something wrong. There's nothing wrong with my mother. And so here we are getting insulted now. And you can see this with anything when they throw these labels at you, like, interesting. I'm getting insulted now because this is my view. And
it's an interesting prospect to say that your mom wasn't standing up for womankind because she stayed home and took care of the kids.
Right. And so, so anyway, it's really sometimes problematic when you have these templates that these liberal people have, these reasoning templates, these constructs in their head, which they don't realize anymore that it's just a framework, not a fact. They confuse facts for frameworks. They think that we used to just say, okay, so you've got this framework. There is actually another way to frame it. Someone could be conservative with regard to this. And we used to say, okay, so this is just a difference of opinion. It's almost like religion. We'd say, you see it this way, this other person sees it the other way, and we used to get along. And now all of a sudden, there's this effort to try to stamp out who's got the false belief, and the other person's wrongly believing and so forth.
And so it's really just arguing about the framework. The framework being what they believe it should be.
But the framework being how they want to see reality, how they want to frame it.
Gotcha.
Okay. What do we got left here? How much time?
It's about time to wrap up.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
we can tell if it's time to wrap up. We got two things to say. You can Google Good Politics and YouTube channel, put Good Politics in quotes, or Google, just put Good Politics podcast.
Now you can even ask Siri. You could just say, Siri, play Good Politics by Dr. Wilson. Good Politics by Dr. Wilson. It works on everything.
Okay.
It's exciting stuff. I asked Siri to play it. They gave us our latest episode, and she'll even let you know when new episodes release. So check that out on iPhone. Outside of that, happy Constitution Day from the 17th.
And until next week.
Yeah, until next week.